Welcome to another hobby. I'm Austin. Today's hobby, blah, 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 blah. Let's go! Double Not Inktober and Dibujista. The official Not Inktober and Dibujista. For the official, we've got Navigator. For Not Inktober, we've got Harlequin. And for Dibujista, we've got Skull. This is sounding to me like a character design challenge of some kind. First, I'm going to look up what the actual definition of Harlequin is. Alright, so it's a mute character in traditional pantomime, typically masked and dressed in a diamond-patterned costume. So I have a little bit of an idea for this character. Not much to go on, I'll probably kind of come up with more as I go. The hard part, I think, is going to be working in the Navigator part of the prompt. I think I'm going to make them something high fantasy. It'll be an easier way to work in the skull, and I can make them maybe like magical navigator of some kind. Maybe even like a trickster god or something, or perhaps what might be a tutorial character in like a video game showing you where to go and how to get started. To do the skull and the fact that Harlequins apparently wear masks, I was thinking of making the mask a skull mask, but I think a funner thing would be to have their head be a skull and they're pulling off their mask, maybe? Although it's harder to get an expression with a skull. Like, you can do it, and skulls tend to look like they're already smiling, which I suppose suits the Harlequin character, but I think having it revealing the skull seems odd. Like, the vibes I'm getting from the Harlequin character is something that is maybe kind of creepy under the surface, but is projecting a happy, friendly air to it, wants you to trust it. So having it pulling off the mask and revealing a skull underneath, it feels like it doesn't really work. It doesn't really go with that vibe. But maybe I could do something kind of on the borders of that. Like, what if I were to this character kind of looking to the side and then maybe like holding their mask over their face and then just having like a hint that it's a skull underneath kind of peeking through? Actually, if I were to do something like that, I think I'd want them holding the mask differently. Something like they'd hold a mask in a masquerade almost. Holding the bottom of it kind of like a playing card almost. And then I could have an expression on the mask that is more welcoming and friendly with the skull underneath. Conceptually, I like where that idea is going, but I think it needs a different pose. I might still be able to work the bow into it if I make the bow really low. And I could have them holding the mask kind of in front of the skull, almost like tipping a hat. And then for the navigator part, I was thinking maybe like they have a staff, and then the staff has like a glass orb, and then the orb has like some kind of magical arrow that points in a direction. I don't know if I can get across that that's what it's doing. Might be a bit difficult. Might have to make it somehow magical. Maybe it's kind of also got some light coming off it, kind of pointing into the distance. Maybe I can make it look sort of compass-like. That might help. Let's see. Maybe some elements of like a gyroscope or something. I think if I add too many of these gyroscope type frameworks, it might kind of muddy up the ability to see the pointer in the middle. So I think just kind of having them more, I guess, hinted at, like aesthetically kind of gyroscope-like, but not necessarily a gyroscope. Maybe just a couple of floating pieces kind of around the outsides to hint at it. And I guess I could try and work in some of this cardinal direction stuff that's on a compass sort of onto the bottom of the sphere. I guess a lot of compasses have this kind of a keychain-like piece, so I might do something like that, connecting it to the staff. One other thing I could do to kind of lean into that more, but might make this composition be mostly staff and not very much character, unless I move his hand position potentially. And then what I was thinking to kind of add to this direction thing is almost like signs you'd see on a old tiny fantasy signpost on the road. That makes the composition have a little bit more of the character compared to the staff, so it's not super unbalanced and just like, look at this staff drawing and also there's a character down here. What could we add to this silhouette to make it more interesting? Could have this with kind of a jester's hat thing going on, potentially. Maybe a little bit more stylistic version of it. Could even potentially make these kind of ethereal, magical. I mean, it wouldn't really make a lot of sense. There wouldn't be much reason to do something like that unless it's just kind of naturally magical based on whatever kind of supernatural creature this Harlequin Navigator is, I guess. Maybe tethered to like little orbs of magic to have like the bells at the end of the jester hat like they do. Now, I could do something fancy on the boots, but being that the boots are overlapping each other, anything I add to them it's going to risk having a lot of tangents and not read very well for silhouette. Tangents, in case you're wondering, are like, let's see if I can give you an example. Like, say you have an arm with folds of cloth in the elbow, and then you have, you know, another arm going in behind, for example. You'd want the arm to kind of come out like so, but if you had a tangent, say you had the arm, you know, skinnier, a tangent would be where it comes out there, and you have this line like continuing into the fold. It might be, you know, technically realistic. That can happen in like photographs and stuff all the time, but when you're drawing, you want to avoid it because it just doesn't read well. It can often read as like a mistake or make it harder to tell what the actual forms of the image are. So where I have a lot of overlapping stuff here with these legs, I want to avoid adding too much complexity and detail because I'll risk adding in those kinds of tangents and muddying up the silhouette, which I want to avoid. Just generally speaking, you want your silhouette to read well. Like if this was all just a solid black, it would still read pretty well currently. There's a bit of muddiness here where there's quite a bit of overlap, but I think you'd probably still figure out generally what's going on there. One thing that might be fun is like coattails. Might also muddy the silhouette, but if I make them exaggerated enough, I can kind of push them way back here. Give them a lot more flowy interest. Adds to the kind of ethereal, otherworldly skull creature Harlequin going on here. And maybe to add to the Navigator part of it, put some arrows on the coattails, because it'll fit with the Navigator theme, plus it'll fit with the creepy, otherworldly ethereal, because it can be kind of like devil's tail, spiked tail, like devils often depicted as having. Now, I have the staff, you know, if I follow the straight line, I have the end of the staff coming out right here, where those lines end. But again, kind of weird for the silhouette a little bit, but if I can rotate the whole thing, I'm going to put the rotation point on the wrist so I can keep it kind of just generally connected, and just rotate it so it matches more this back leg going behind it, and that way we have a solid line of action going all the way through the leg, kind of coming off of the end of the knee. I probably should have done a little bit more work on the anatomy of this pose before starting to figure out where all these details and stuff go, but I think it's probably close enough as is. I mean, let's see what happens when I flip the canvas. It's pretty good. I think the back leg might be a fair bit longer than the front leg. I might be able to fix that fairly easily just by kind of stretching this out a bit. It'll also move the feet a bit further apart to give this silhouette a little bit more, readability and avoid tangents. That's actually another form of tangent, is like these two boots here, if they, let's say this curve went up a little bit higher and they just sort of meet there, that line there is also a tangent, even though it's not overlapping technically. And you want to avoid those if you can. The skull is going to be a little bit weird to do at this angle. Might see if I can find some reference for a skull at a similar angle. Okay, so I found this 3D model of a skull in Sketchfab, thanks to Sergey Egelsky. I'm going to use this as a reference by just putting it in the general position that I want. So let's see if I can kind of try and make it match that. I think about there is good. And then I have this program called Greenshot, which I highly recommend to any artists and stuff out there. It allows you to change your print screen button into a thing that pauses all of your display, and it gives you a little, I'm going to use it now. I don't know how well it'll pick up with OBS recording, but this is how it works. Press print screen, and I get this thing. Allows me to pick a part of the screen. So I'm going to take this skull, and it opens up a drop-down menu. You can't see it right now because for some reason it went on to my second monitor, but it allows you to choose things like saving it as an image or copying it to clipboard. So I'm going to copy to the clipboard, go back to this Clip Studio, and just paste. And I've got this skull. Like, I don't generally like tracing things. I think I mentioned before. Feels a little bit cheating, a little bit scummy. But in this case, skulls are a complex thing, and I'm just trying to do quick daily drawings for Inktober just for the fun of it. So this will save me some time. The jacket is going to be a little bit harder, especially in like the shoulder. This part of the shoulder up here is really kind of confusing to understand what it's doing with that puffy sleeve. The problem with the puffy sleeve is at this angle it doesn't read super well, and over here it's like completely hidden by the mask. Could potentially just get rid of it. Yeah, maybe I do that and put something on the elbow instead, like another one of those sort of donut shapes that's on the foot. What I might do for the jacket, because the legs are already going to be pretty busy, I might just kind of hint at the diamond pattern by having it come down in just like 2 points on the front, and not actually full diamonds, but basically just triangles coming down. And maybe to sell it better, I'll make the jacket follow those, like that. Just kind of got like tails on the front and tails on the back. Well, I could probably continue this diamond pattern up, actually, kind of around the arm. Oof, I don't know about this. Maybe muddying the actual shape of the jacket too much, making it confusing to read. Okay, well, since I have these points on the front, these like kind of pointed coattail sections, let's try making that the start point of the diamonds instead and see if that works better. So if we were to kind of continue these up, get rid of this part of the jacket entirely, and then have them kind of come to a point on the chest of the jacket, and then yeah, I think that helps sell the shape of the torso better. Makes it a little bit easier to tell what's supposed to be going on there. Again, with this one, I think I'm probably going to do the coloring as just quick flat colors like I did with my last character design thing. Since I'm spending a lot of time on the design, I don't want to spend a lot of time on the execution as well, because I don't want to be here all day. Let's make these arrows follow more of the diamond motif we got going on by making them kind of the same angle point rather than like a equilateral triangle. Alright, I guess I'm gonna say that sketch-wise that's pretty much done, and I guess I'll start on inking. I'm using a parallel line ruler here so that anywhere I start drawing on the screen it's going to follow that angle. I can just put in a nice long straight line, and I can turn off that ruler and continue. Actually, I may want to do that for the arrows on the staff as well. Just change this angle. Let's put a guide in the center of it so I know where the tips of the arrow points should be. I could also use this to do the arrows themselves, but that would mean doing like another 8 separate angles with this ruler, setting them up and drawing them, and it sounds like a lot of work and I don't want to do it. So they're just gonna have to be a little bit rougher, and I'm just gonna have to live with that. Now, the reason I'm being so cavalier about drawing these lines overlapping each other like this is because I'm on a vector layer, which means if I set my eraser to be a vector eraser, then I can very easily just drag across here and get all of these lines cut out right up to the edge. Makes that super easy. Because I have the stabilization on this brush fairly high right now, 34, if I just do these lines quickly, I should be able to kind of get fairly straight lines. For this orb thing, I'm going to use another handy ruler that Clip Studio has called concentric circle. Say I want the center of the sphere to be right in the center of the staff, about here. Now I can do these like big curved lines really easily. For any of the magical stuff, I'm still going to do the line art, but I'm going to do it on a separate layer so that I can do effects or change colors of it or something later if I want, or easily remove it if I want to. Let's bring in my skull and do some cheating, like I was talking about before. I want this skull to be a little bit less angry looking at this angle, so I'm kind of adding a bit to the top part of the eye sockets. And I'm purposefully not following it exactly because I feel like it'll start to look a little bit too artificial if it's too perfect. So I'm kind of straying from the shape a little bit in some places on purpose. Like not going all the way back with the teeth, for example. Leaving this kind of hole in the side of the jaw that people kind of expect to see with a skull, but you don't really see from this angle. I'm just doing it anyway. And I'm adding the bottom row of teeth that you couldn't see in that original angle of that skull, because people expect to be able to see them. I'm going to change up this diamond pattern on the coat one more time, just to simplify it. I'm going to have just the one diamond going all the way up to the shoulder. Because these pants are like tights, they're going to be not a lot of wrinkles around the joints, just like very small folds, but the rest is going to be more skin tight. Okay, that's the line art done. Now I'm just gonna plop in the base colors. When it comes to shading, we'll see how far along I am and if I want to do it. I might just do some really basic cell shading style shading, or I might just leave it flat and call it a day. Probably want to keep this to a few colors, like red, black, ivory, maybe some like gold on the trim and stuff. Okay, I don't want to spend forever shading this, but with the magic having gradient to it, I feel like I should do some. So I think I'm going to try and do kind of a quick and dirty process where you select areas with a lasso and use a soft brush just kind of within those areas to do some really quick shading. just noticed how long this is taking. I should really start wrapping things up, I think. Okay, kind of lost track of time there at the end, but I think I got what I wanted out of it for the most part. The orb could have been a little bit better, I think. The staff in general, I think, could have been better, but I'm happy with the character themselves. So, I'm going to call that complete. So yeah, thanks for watching me explore another hobby. Like and subscribe if that's something you want to do, and have a good one.